Shadow Secretary of State Andrew Griffith.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And may I welcome the new Secretary of State to his place and congratulate him on his appointment, as well as the members for Halifax and Rhondda. It is a vitally important role in government, and it will surely be a delight and privilege for him to champion our hard-working, innovative businesses in Cabinet and on the world stage as President of the Board of Trade. I particularly welcome his comments that the government's priority must be to double down on growth.
Welcome back to the most fiery corner of UK politics on YouTube. Today's showdown in Parliament isn't just about legislation, it's about survival. Shadow Secretary Andrew Griffith came out swinging, slamming the government for pushing what he calls the wrong bill at the wrong moment. And trust me, the punches he lands here will have the front bench squirming. From cancelled ministerial shifts to job insecurity, the opposition sets the stage for one of the most brutal takedowns we've seen in weeks. Buckle up, this one's about to get heated.
And position itself as an active partner that delivers success, supports business and backs wealth creation. Where he does that, he can be assured of our support. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, if that is really his view, then we should not be debating this bill today, and the government should never have brought it forward. I can, in fact, well understand why ministers may well be concerned about job insecurity and last-minute shift cancellations. After all, their predecessors, the member for Ellesmere Port and the member for Harrow West, had their own front-bench shifts today cancelled by the Prime Minister with barely a week's notice. Apparently, that boss didn't even have the decency to fire them in person. But at least they can take comfort in knowing that at the current rate of departures from number 10, there won't soon be anyone left to do the sacking. Madam Deputy Speaker, this is the wrong bill at the wrong... It's the wrong bill at the wrong moment. And rather than proceed with a bill which, on the government's own assessment, will reduce employment and growth, now is the time to put the national interest first. But they can't do that. The Secretary of State can't do what he himself believes because they are too weak. They have a Prime Minister who is incapable of providing the leadership that we need at this time. In time, they will come to realise this is a moment they walked themselves to the end of a plank with an anchor tied around their feet. The business world is watching today in disbelief. Only last week, it was reported that hiring demand amongst British employers has fallen to a new low, with the UK recording one of the sharpest slowdowns in recruitments in the world. The number of unemployed has risen by around 200,000 people already on their watch. The Institute of Directors report that business confidence has fallen to its lowest point in 2 years. The Chancellor has declined to repeat her clear assurance given previously to the CBI that the government wouldn't come forward with more borrowing or taxes. And there is a backlog at the Employment Tribunal, which the Secretary of State did not mention once, which was 491,000 open cases at the last count. The 5 largest business organisations, almost without precedent, have written jointly on this bill that it will have deeply damaging implications for the government's priority growth mission. And we've just heard the Minister reject even the amendments which might have mitigated the worst of the harm. These are not unreasonable amendments. They're not partisan amendments. Almost all have cross-party support, including from their own party in the other place. They are the result of consultation with business, careful consideration and weeks of debate in the other place. And it will be a bad day for democracy if honourable and right honourable members vote against them today. And before they have to account to their constituents, I strongly urge them to study exactly what it is that they will be voting against. Amendment 23 and Amendments 106 to 120 has a core purpose of stopping this company slipping into the rates of youth unemployment seen in other European countries, where getting a first chance feels more like a lottery than a smooth passage into the workforce. Those opposite often like to cast themselves as the party of social mobility, but the reality is, if you remove probation periods, the chance for an employer to take a chance on somebody, you will kill social mobility. The debates in the other place highlighted the impact of not having a qualified period, not just on businesses, but for the police and GPs too. And no proposal has been accepted by the government that reconciles the promise to introduce a day one right to unfair dismissal with a commitment to a light touch process for probation. At this stage, the only way to avoid undermining the government's 80% employment target, is to accept the amendment added in the House of Lords that reduces that period. I'll happily give way.
Now let's break down the drama. Griffith isn't just making noise here. He's pointing directly at collapsing business confidence, rising unemployment, and a tribunal backlog that's spiraling out of control. Think about it. Nearly 500,000 open cases clogging up the system, while small businesses are staring at legal fees of up to $20,000 just to defend themselves. And what's the government response? Rejecting amendments with cross-party support that even their own MPs backed in the Lords. Viewers, here's the real question. Is this principled policy-making or pure political stubbornness? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Did the opposition land a fair hit? Or is this just parliamentary theatre at its best?
Happily give way.
Shadow Minister understand the difference between fair dismissal and unfair dismissal?
The Shadow Minister absolutely understands that, and he does so and understands the implication of this clause from having spoken to Make UK, CBI, the Institute of Directors, the British Chamber of Commerce and the Federation of Small Business, all of whom urge the government to rethink on this particular clause. Business don't recognise the idea that a process that ends in a full legal tribunal, flanked by lawyers, after typically a 2-year wait and lost management time, is light touch, as the bill describes. Legal fees alone for defending an unfair dismissal, legal fees alone for defending an unfair dismissal case range from $15,000 to $20,000. I'll give way.
On that point, does the honourable gentleman not recognise that very few cases in themselves end up at tribunal, particularly at a point where all due processes of actually making sure that there is a process happens. Not all dismissals are unfair.
Of course, not all dismissals are unfair, but if it wasn't a process that ended up in the court, in the tribunals, we wouldn't be facing a 491,000 on the government's own figures number of individuals with current open cases, and it wouldn't be the case that business organisations are citing legal fees in that order of magnitude.
One of the reasons why so many of those cases do not end up actually in a tribunal is because businesses, cognizant of the loss of management time and £15,000 to £20,000 worth of fees, simply pay up rather than contest.
Well, my honourable friend, with his experience, is exactly right. And just think about the impact. Think about the impact on a small business of a fee of that level of magnitude, the length of time that it takes to get justice, and what's going to happen. This is a really, really important point, and the opposition, the government benches opposite, will be living this reality over the remainder of their term, and they will have to account for this. What's going to happen is that businesses will be discouraged from hiring anybody without a perfect CV, anyone without a proven track record of work. Who are we talking about? We are talking about young people. We're talking about people with conditions such as dyslexia and related. And we're talking about those who've got a period of inactivity in their CVs. People such as former prisoners seeking a second chance to go straight. Those will be the victims of that particular amendment. Madam Deputy Speaker, Labour ministers should realise that they will be the first victims of overturning Amendment 62. The long-standing principle here is a simple one. We shouldn't be allowing strikes to be called where not even a majority of union members have voted, let alone voted in favour. A strike could still proceed with just over a quarter of those eligible. And opposing this amendment will guarantee that unions are held hostage by a militant minority who force strikes even when their own members don't support that. We can ill afford more strikes that crush growth, prevent workers from getting to work and endanger lives. And the public will not forget, Madam Deputy Speaker, the change that this government seeks to make. Amendment 1 is a typical example of where the government just don't understand or have failed to listen to businesses and to hospitality and seasonal businesses in particular. What started as an attempt to ban zero-hours contract has morphed into an absolute chain around the necks of both employers and workers. The government will no doubt cry about unintended consequences when the time comes, but I can tell them now the consequences will be clear, and a cacophony of business groups like UK Hospitality, British Retail Consortium and the Federation of Small Businesses have explained precisely this to them. I would just gently say, if the government feels so strongly about zero-hours contracts, the best way of putting their own house in order would be to start with tackling precisely that which operates in the armed forces reserves. Amendment 48 seeks to protect the countless businesses across the country that rely directly on seasonal work. From the coast of Devon and Cornwall to Great Yarmouth, from the Secretary of State and my own county of Sussex to Ayrshire, there are millions of workers employed in seasonal industries. That often takes place in communities that themselves are heavily reliant on tourism, both foreign and domestic, and are competing in a very competitive international market. The government's already taken an axe to the hospitality and retail industries with the removals of relief, and this amendment would be a very good way of going some direction to support them. Finally, in opposing Amendment 49, the government is showing their commitment to ignore small businesses above all others. Now, the Secretary of State says that he wants to listen to businesses. I take him at his word that he wishes to do so. But why then oppose this amendment which simply seeks to codify precisely that? Countless small businesses who have a real challenge with dealing what is now 330 pages of red tape in this bill. Why on earth would the government put its members through the lobbies to oppose listening, consulting with small businesses? Finally, we support Amendment 60, which has cross-party support at the behest of millions of those who enjoy heritage railway attractions. If the Secretary of State has not yet made it to the Amberley Museum, which is not that far from his own constituency, he knows it well. He's very welcome to come and visit and listen to precisely how this will affect the volunteers who are gaining valuable experience. And I'm just perplexed, Madam Deputy Speaker, why the government would be so opposed to Amendment 96 on the protection of whistleblowers. I think that's I genuinely confused as to why they would do that. Time and time again, ministers on both sides of this House have come to the dispatch box talking about government scandals. We've seen brave people in those organisations try to speak up, try to raise their concerns, only to have them dismissed. They claim this is about workers' rights, yet seem to have zero interest in protecting workers who try to reveal serious problems in the private and public sector. And I'd urge all colleagues to read this for themselves and to make up their own mind where they think the right place to be is. And good luck in explaining to their constituents why they voted against that entirely reasonable amendment to protect people who are trying to do the right thing. So let me finally just be clear. The Conservatives remain firmly opposed to all of the damaging measures in this bill. We fought this at every reading. and we will reverse its most destructive measures because we believe that we want to get more young people into work, and that this bill will do precisely the opposite. It's not really about workers' rights. The majority of the clauses in this bill relate to trade union rights. And I hope that as members opposite rise to speak this afternoon, they will properly be declaring their interests. Workers have nothing to gain by more strikes, Madam Deputy Speakers, by more disruption, lasting longer and with shorter notice periods. They will not be improved by policing banter in pubs or having their wages defaulted into political funds for far-left causes. And above all, more rights on paper help no one if you have not got a job. We understand that fundamental truth, that it's the private sector that creates growth, it's businesses that creates jobs, and it's socialism that we see on the other side that kills them. These are reasonable amendments. This bill has had a great deal of scrutiny in the other House. I believe the Secretary of State is sincere in his role in wanting growth in our economy, to show business that he does understand them, but really, rather than reading out the script that officials have written for him, he ought to be standing up today and talking about the amendments that he will be supporting. We will always act in the national interest, and that is why the opposition will be supporting the amendments today.
And there you have it, a debate that cuts to the heart of Britain's economic future. The opposition paints this bill as a direct attack on jobs, growth, and social mobility, while the government insists it's about modernizing labor rights. What's undeniable is the growing divide, with business leaders warning of damage, MPs trading fiery jabs, and the public caught in the middle. So, who came out on top today? The government defending its bill, or the opposition exposing its cracks? Let us know below. And if you found this debate as explosive as we did, make sure to hit that like button, share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more jaw-dropping UK political breakdowns every week.